Hello, I'm Jason Connolly, and welcome to this special episode of the Career Success podcast in collaboration with the Law Society. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back, but if you're new, welcome to the show. Through this episode, and by sharing Shaun's story, we're going to try and offer practical advice to help you in both your career in legal and also your career in general. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Shaun Wallace. Shaun is an English barrister and senior criminal defence advocate of 37 years with experience in a wide range of serious criminal cases, from murder, in particular Operation Trident cases where he is highly regarded, manslaughter, serious sexual offences, fraud, money laundering, firearms and drug trafficking. Shaun has lectured in environmental law, health and safety and road transport and regulations. In addition, he is familiar with all aspects of the Proceeds of Crime Act, including restraint, confiscation and enforcement. Shaun frequently leads in multi-handled cases. In 2004, Shaun won Mastermind and was ranked 286th in the World Quizzing Championships. Shaun is really well known for being a chaser on the ITV quiz show, The Chase. He also has a book published in 2008, Shaun Wallace, Chasing the Dream. Shaun, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honour and a privilege. Thank you.
So I know so many people at the Law Society are going to be absolutely delighted to hear your story and how it all got started for you. And I think lots of people obviously know you from The Chase, but there's so much, that's kind of what's going on now. But the story of how you got into legal, tell us about your story, Shaun, because it's fascinating.
So far as my own journey started, obviously, when I was born in 1960 to my mum and dad. My mum was a state registered nurse. My dad used to work in Hines. He worked there for the past 40 years, devoted his life to that organisation. And, I've grown up in the London area. I've actually lived on the same street for the last 55 years. So, I've not left my sort of roots or beginnings, because I think it's important, no matter how successful you are, to have that stability in your life. And, where I've lived for the last 55 years gives me that stability.
So what kind of drives you to want to set up that same street? Is it kind of, for you familiar and that's what you find?
The old sort of programme from Cheers, everybody knows your name. You just feel comfortable and happy where you are. Everybody's proud of what I've achieved, but nobody basically puts me in a pedestal. I'm comfortable sitting on the floor, really. And, everybody treats me as I like to be treated. No better than anybody else. So,
as Shaun from the local street, not asking you quiz questions as you walk out.
Oh yeah, they'll always do that. But Shaun from where we grew up, I've still got the same friends I grew up with, and it's just wonderful to be appreciated in a place that I call home.
Tell us about your story of going into the law in general and how that all kind of came about, because it doesn't sound like it was necessarily like it is for some people, their parents were in the industry or whatever. For you, it's kind of, it must have been at the time for you and your family, wow, you're going out and, it must have been a real thing of prestige.
Well, for me, I wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was 11 years old. So, programs like Crown Court. So for all the people at the Law Society who remember the old sort of Fools Just the Crown Court series. And I was sort of fascinated by that. One followed the Bailey, who, as I say, although he's a fictional character, is my all-time hero. So I used to love watching legal programs. And when I was 12 years old, both myself and a friend of mine who also wanted to be a lawyer, and he eventually qualified as a barrister as well, from the same background as me, we wrote to the Bar Council, and they told us what we needed to achieve in order to actually get those qualifications. And I kept that letter for the best part of 6 years, because I used that as a source of a drive, fuel and inspiration. And, when you go to actually do your sort of exams, in the 1960s and 70s, there was that two-tier system of exams whereby O-levels and CSEs, and there was a lot of streaming in relation to, if you came from a certain sort of background, you were expected to do O-levels. If you came from a sort of lower class background, you were expected to do CSEs. And the educational establishment and the establishment at large had a low expectation of black and ethnic minorities in terms of their own dreams and aspirations. If you wanted to be a doctor, lawyer, or a dentist, that was seen as an anathema. They expected you to either work in a factory, drive buses, or if you're a female, they expected you to either work in a typing pool or sadly end up in a council house pregnant with loads of kids.
Yeah.
So I brought that letter to my careers teacher, and I'll never forget that day actually. Would you want to be Wallace when you grew up? So I showed her the letter, and she turned around and said, "You, Wallace, at best you're going to probably end up in prison. At worst, you're probably going to end up stacking shelves." I mean, she was right about me ending up in prison. Only she forgot to say that after having seen my clients, I can go home again. So, it's easy to be devastated by such a withering assessment of your life chances, and it wasn't a nice thing for me to hear. But the one thing I was determined from leaving that meeting was that the only way I can succeed and stay in control of my own destiny is to make sure I educate my mind.
And we're going to come on to that in a lot more detail as we go throughout this conversation. To say you've educated your mind is an understatement, Shaun, with the amount of information you seem to have.
Yeah, but that might be true, Jason. But one of the reasons why I wrote the book is because you can have a photographic memory, you can have a sort of computer-like mind. But when you're doing the rite of passage of exams, if you don't know how to actually answer exams under the pressure of time, then you're going to struggle. And for me, it was a really torturous rite of passage. It took me 5 times to pass my O-level English language. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote that book, because I want people to actually realise that, when you do have setbacks in life, the future's not behind you. Your future's always in front of you, and you've got to dust yourself down and basically, move forward. Obviously, you're going to need the support and guidance of people who've got your back, people who believe in you, like your teachers, your family, your friends. And, it was very, very difficult for me. I remember this time 42 years ago, when I didn't get the requisite grades to get to university in terms of my A-levels, and all my friends had gone off to university. I just broke down in tears because for me there was no plan B, and I felt like Muhammad Ali. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to be the greatest, but if you talk the talk, you've got to be able to walk the walk. And at that time, it seemed like my boasts of being a famous lawyer one day in the future seemed hollow. But what I had to do was to actually reconstruct the way in which I approached exams, and obviously I had a lot of help and support and guidance. And eventually the penny dropped, and I, got my A-levels. I went to North London Polytechnic, and they say that your undergraduate years are the best years of your life because you change from a sort of young adolescent into a young adult. And that's exactly what happened to me. When I got called to the bar in the 27th of June, 27th of November, 1984, that is still today the best thing that ever happened to me, because I talked the talk and I walked the walk. But even when they were handing me the certificate, saying that I was a newly qualified barrister, and amongst all the celebration, the one thing that struck home to me, so I remember I was looking up on the ceiling and seeing all the illustrious lawyers of years gone by in my inn, and I asked myself, what am I going to be doing in 10 years' time, 20 years' time? And 2 things I said to myself was this: no matter what I achieve in my career, you've got to be yourself as a lawyer. You can't imitate anybody. You can obviously look to lawyers who actually, are eloquent, are brilliant at their field, and try and take bits of their brilliance, try and craft it into your own way of presenting law. But at the end of the day, you've got to present your law through yourself, because anything else would be simply fake.
Where did you get that drive from to have that many knockbacks and to keep coming back and going for it?
Because you've got to, because for me, there was no plan B. I wanted to be a lawyer. I told everybody that, so I've got to back it. But, when you do come off the academic conveyor belt, and as I was saying, at the point when we were all celebrating that we were qualified barristers, the one thing which struck home to me at that point, and it's something which I'll always say to young people, and that's one of the points I'm going to leave at the end of this talk: all the success, all the achievement you achieve academically, or indeed when you climb a sort of a greasy pole of your career, all success does is bring you to the start line of a different challenge. That's all it does.
That's a beautiful anecdote. I love that. I love the way.
But it's true.
Yeah, it is true.
Because the minute you start to rest on your laurels and you think you've made it, that's when the grip you've got on the greasy pole becomes less effective and slide all the way down. So, the one thing I will always say to people, even the most prominent people at the top of the profession would say the same thing and agree with me. The minute you think you've made it, you're on your way out. You've always got to try and strive to achieve. You're only as good as your last closing speech. And the best barristers always have that mantra. They're only as good as the last closing speech, because that's what makes them prepare. That's what makes them want to actually put their client's interest first, irrespective of whether or not it's a driving matter, right up to the most serious type of offence in the land.
You're making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, because a lot of what you're saying is very true to me as well. And do I think I'm successful now, owning one of the biggest legal recruitment agencies in the country? I feel like I haven't even started yet, Shaun.
And same here. That's why my book's called Chasing the Dream. I'm forever chasing dreams. I'm forever setting goals and targets for myself.
Would you say you're living the dream now?
Yes, because 20 years ago, I was Shaun who? Nobody knew who I was. My career was going through a bit of a sort of dry spell at that time. I was practicing at home by myself. I'd broken my leg or my ankle, and I couldn't walk for about the best part of 18 months. I had to go through endless operations. And it's easy to feel sorry for yourself. When your career does hit the skids, there may be external factors, but the one person you've got to ask the reason why is the reflection in the mirror.
And I think that's one thing that's really coming, and we're very similar. A lot of what you say, it really resonates with me, because I haven't had it easy. I grew up in temporary housing in London, moving around every 2 minutes. And I went to an awful comprehensive. It was knocked down actually shortly after I left. So, and no one was chaining themselves to the gate, I can assure you, when the demolition crew came in. But what made you decide to go down the barrister route? Was it kind of that real appeal of being in court? And...
Yeah, if you used to look at my old school report, Shaun would make a very good talkative clown. Shaun was always talking, never stand still, but I was always confident in my own ability. And if you were to come to my home right now, Jason, you'd see I've got a mural on my wall. It's called My Inspiration. So, when I was a kid growing up, I was proud of the colour of my skin. And justifiably so. The best footballer in the world was black. The most famous sportsman in the world was black. The most famous political prisoner in the world was black. So all those people were a source of inspiration to me, because they're the same colour of skin as me. And, I lived in an area an era whereby, racial discrimination was rife. It wasn't hidden in any way, shape or form. You basically had to be proud of your skin and not be ashamed of it. So that's why I realized that if I wanted to make a difference in my life, I had to make sure that I controlled my own destiny and educated my mind, because that's the only way you can stay in control of your own destiny, because it gives you the platform to do whatever you like. Not everybody's going to be a barrister, not everybody's going to be a nuclear scientist, but whatever you achieve or what you want to be in life, make sure you've got the qualifications to back up that talent.
And I was doing a blog just the other day about 1970s London. You'd walk past a pub and it would be commonplace to find things like no Irish, no blacks, and this on the door.
And not necessarily in that order.
Yeah. It's crazy to think where we've come in this amount of time, but I think there's still so far to go about kind of equality. It's not just it's so deep rooted. It goes all the way down to where people live. It's such a big topic and such a big issue, and I still think there's so much to be done. We could spend the whole time talking about that, Shaun, but we won't. But no. I think the way that you've kind of had that determination, which again it resonates with me. To always say, right, I've got to make something, I've got to go ahead, I've got to keep pushing. That in it's to have that determination when you're getting all these knockbacks. And I know that there's been a lot of knockbacks, to keep getting them and keep rising back up. That's what's giving you so much strength. But how do you pick yourself up in those times of real? Is it quite a quick
because
process?
If you lay down and die, you'll never resurrect yourself. Simple as that. If you lay down and die and basically say, I give up, I've lost, then whoever has put you in that position, or whatever circumstances have put you in that position, has won. And remember, God's given us one life to try and make the best of that life. And however long, however short that life's going to be, I think it's you should make the best of that.
And I love what you say as well about the kind of mural that you've got on your wall. it's kind of like a giant vision board, and gives you
Yeah, I've got races from Pele to Harriet Tubman to Pele, Muhammad Ali, and the two most important people are my mum and dad. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
What made you decide to do criminal work as a barrister?
Listen, it's probably due to Horace Rumpole. Probably watching programs like Crown Court. Horace Rumpole, okay, he's a fictionalized character, but as a kid growing up, I had real life legal heroes. John Mortimer was a legal hero of mine because he was one of the top QCs in the country. George Carman QC was another one because, he won some extraordinary cases as a criminal barrister and he was at the top of his field. Mike Mansfield, another one. So you look to those type of people and you want to try and emulate them. If I had a fraction of their ability, then I'm going to get to the top of the bar profession. That's what I want to do. So, that's what I wanted to be, an advocate, standing up, presenting cases on behalf of your client, addressing a jury. There's no bigger thrill.
Is there kind of a process you go through every time you take on a client where you're kind of looking at their credibility, or, what's the kind of thought process when you take a client on?
If I get a brief, like any brief, I'm not there to judge a client's guilt or innocence. That's a matter for the tribunal, whether a jury or in the magistrate's courts, the bench or the tribunal. And you've got to take at face value what your client tells you. If he says or she says that I'm innocent, then okay, you're innocent. But the way in which I do it, I go through the evidence in meticulous detail, playing devil's advocate, and obviously taking my client's instructions. And based upon those various factors, that's when you give your advice, whether or not, you're asked to give your advice. What do you think? Okay, you can never predict the outcome of a trial. But based upon those factors, if a client of mine can't really explain certain aspects of the evidence, or it doesn't seem plausible, then I'm going to tell them, in my considered opinion, how a jury may view that part of the evidence. And it may result in your conviction. Similarly, it's not for me to basically, judge my client. If the client says he or she is innocent, then I've got to accept that. And as long as I feel comfortable with the fact that, the case should be tried in an adversarial process, then I'll represent that client.
Really interesting, and I definitely wouldn't want to be on the other side of the bench, defended on the CPS side against you, Shaun. But I guess it's kind of that meticulous level of detail that it really stood you in good stead. But being kind of a barrister back in when we were talking about kind of race and being black, what was it like being? Was there a lot of black barristers back then? Or?
Well, I got called in 1984, and I would say I was one of the early pioneers of the bar in terms of the number of black faces who actually practiced at the bar. To try and get into the so-called established chambers was very, very difficult. The so-called ghetto chambers were second-class type of barristers who weren't drawn from the ranks of a social class. We had to form our own chambers in order to actually get our work. The type of work we would done, obviously, were publicly funded work, so you weren't doing the sort of high-profile commercial or tax laws. You were normally doing family law, immigration, or crime. I'm comfortable with the fact that I am a publicly funded lawyer, because I think it's important that everybody should have access to justice in terms of the best access to the best laws you possibly can, as opposed to being able to be in a position to pay for it. So, I'm comfortable working as a legal aid lawyer. Obviously, I've seen the profound changes to the legal aid provision system, which has made it very, very difficult for people nowadays to actually qualify for legal aid, and therefore are denied the right to access to good justice. And that's something which doesn't sit comfortable with me as a lawyer of 37 years. And, who knows where it's going to lead to.
Well, it seems to be getting worse and worse, and there's going to have to be a breaking point soon where the system, just can't. People need to be able to have that access. What do you think? There's a particular way to get this problem sorted out?
proper funding, simple as that. Everybody's saying that we're all living in a sort of financial straitjacket, especially in relation to these very, very challenging and difficult economic times due to the COVID pandemic. But I think it's important because the one thing about the English legal system, it is the beacon. It was the sort of benchmark for all systems to follow. But what you're seeing is that courts closing, crumbling buildings, low morale. And one of the most important things to me is the future of the legal profession in terms of young entrants coming in to the profession. Are they coming into a profession whereby they really can forge and make a career in the future? I would never, ever discourage anybody, Jason, from coming into the profession because if you were to do so, then the one thing that's going to happen to the legal profession, whether or not you're a barrister or a solicitor, is that if you don't have the diverse talent to recruit, then the whole profession is going to wither on the vine and die.
Well, it sets a dangerous precedence, doesn't it? When you start making these cutbacks and then to funding, we find now, even with people coming through the profession, there's not many people want to go and do legal aid now because of that reason. Then that sets a real precedence that there's going to be a real problem soon if it's not kind of addressed. So no, I totally agree with what you're saying. So sort of walk us through, Shaun, kind of your experiences of kind of progressing throughout your legal career, and what advice would you give to people that want to go and do the bar? It's really difficult now to even get chambers.
It took me 4 years to get tenancy. It took me it took me 2 years to get tenancy. It took me 4 years to get my first Crown Court brief. And, it can be demoralising. So what I did to support myself, I taught 4 nights a week for 14 years at Hackney College, because that was a way of me of giving something back to try and inspire, using myself as a professional, say, look at me, you can be what I have achieved, only better. And that's a message which I always give to young people when I go into schools and colleges, because as I say, I'm the guardian of today. You represent the next generation of tomorrow, and it's important that people like me use their fame in a responsible way to try and inspire the next generation. So it was very, very difficult. I'm not saying at times he didn't feel like I didn't feel like throwing the towel in, and I did. But it's that perseverance. That's what I wanted to achieve. So I have had a sort of roller coaster nature of my career. In terms of having some really, really good times and having some really, really challenging times.
You've got to be able to take the bad times.
You've got to, because that will help you appreciate the good times. And the one thing now, the one thing I'm glad what's happened to me now, especially later on in life, with all the sort of success I've had outside the field of law, it's made me appreciate what I've got. It's made me more responsible for what I do have to try and help others, because with power comes responsibility, and you've got to use that in a responsible and proper way to try and not just enrich yourself, but to try and help others.
Yeah, and everything that you're saying is about giving back through even the fact that you do legal aid, the fact that you're at this college, and I get a real sense from you. It's about being the absolute best you could possibly be, and that really, really comes across. And as well, the fact that you've managed that, you've got yourself into such a position where legal has opened the door to you to all these other things. And it's, I feel that at times about what I do in recruitment, but, you become great at something, it does open doors.
I owe the bar a great deal. The reason why I am where I am today is because of the bar. Because when I went into the field of sort of quiz television, I use my transferable skills as a barrister to be the best quizzer I could be, because the law teaches you to remain calm, teaches you to think on your feet, it teaches you to react under pressure, and it teaches you to be calm under pressure. And for me, sitting in the seat, the mastermind seat at the grand final, was fairly relaxing for me, because if I can appear in the Court of Appeal in front of the sternest judges in the land, and sitting in a black chair answering questions with 2 million people, 20 million people watching you is a doddle.
And it's really interesting what you say, but I think those kind of soft skills that you talk about, those aren't taught in university. And it doesn't seem that they're taught these days either.
Well, okay. When you go through the sort of academic conveyor belt, obviously, you've got to learn the various laws. But what they do teach you when you go to do your professional exams, if you go to become a lawyer, as a solicitor, or at the bar, they do teach you those nuances. The one thing, nobody's born an advocate. Nobody's born confident. That comes with nurturing. That comes with training. That comes with teaching. If you see yourself as an advocate, then you've got to develop those skills as an advocate. Even the best top QC in the country had to start at the beginning at the magistrates' courts, and I'm sure he or she, when they started out, like me, had beads of sweat dripping off their forehead, having to appear in front of a sort of daunting court, trying to argue the best for your client. And if you didn't have that, there's something wrong.
I guess it's a very steep learning curve, and you learn quickly when you stood in a court. I remember when I was a police officer, stood in the dock, shaking,
Well, not so much quickly, but you learn gradually. It's about a gradual learning process.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, the more, as I say, the more you practice, the better you become.
And that I totally agree with. Let's move on, because we have to get to the quiz subject, Shaun. It's probably what so many people are waiting for. We love the legal, Shaun. We love the legal, but we want to hear about the quiz. So 2004, you won Mastermind, 286th in the World Quizzing Championships.
Well, I'll tell you about the World Quizzing Championships in a moment. But so far as my quizzing career is concerned, that started when my career as a lawyer was going through the doldrums. And when you had no work and you're basically living at home watching daytime TV, and you're basically thinking that your career is behind you, and you're wondering where the next brief's coming from. Again, it was very, very demoralizing. And I used to sort of take comfort and salvation from watching game shows like 15 to 1, The Weakest Link. And it's easy sitting in the comfort of your sofa answering questions, but how are you under the bright lights? Studio audience, stomach churning, an intimidating question master. So I wanted to see how good I was. I wasn't interested in the prize. I just wanted to see how good I was. And if I was the best and there's a prize at the end of it, then I'm going to claim it.
It's amazing that you test yourself. I'm noticing this similar thread. You put yourself, well, I want to see if I can remain the calmest person possible. I want to test myself in that regard.
That's a tribute to my training as a lawyer. The best lawyers want to sort of, push themselves. As an advocate, as an advisor, you want to push yourselves as far as you possibly can go. And now, so far as the quizzing world is concerned, I brought those skills to the quizzing arena. So in 2003, when they brought Mastermind back, I decided to apply. I was the first Black person in the show's history to apply for the show.
It's crazy. It's crazy that you were
after I won, I didn't tell a soul. The first time my friends and my family knew was when it was on TV. And I was in Jamaica. I always tell this story because it's true. Because I was the last person to qualify for the grand final. So I knew the broadcasting schedule, because I didn't want to be in the country when it happened, because I knew what was going to happen next. So I got to the airport, I flew to Jamaica. So I rang my mum, I said, look, Mum, I need to get out of the country. She goes, what's wrong, Shaun? I said, look, Mum, I'll tell you in a week, put the phone down. And she was so worried. So, and on the night of the grand final, she got 300 telephone calls, and my dad was in a working man's club, and they gave him a standing ovation. And I'd love to have seen that.
Oh.
And the reason why I did that is because at the time when I won, it was the closest victory in the show's entire history. The guy who came second got 24 points like me, but he passed twice and I didn't pass. And I remember John Humphreys asking me a year later when they interviewed me, they said to me, why didn't you pass? I said, I only passed when I'm playing football.
What a lovely story. I could just imagine the reaction of your dad standing up.
Well, not just from my family and my friends and the whole press. They were just wonderful. You couldn't buy that publicity. But I was retired. I retired from quizzing. Having won the best quiz show in the world, really. Where else could I go? You could do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I probably would have ended up winning £1 million. And I'm always asked, what would I prefer to win? £1 million or be the first black person in history to win Mastermind? And it will always be the latter, because you can spend £1 million.
Well, exactly. It goes quickly when you've got it, I'm sure. Not that I'm speaking from a place of having £1 million, I can imagine.
But, for what I'd achieved, being the first black person to win Mastermind, for my race, what it demonstrated is that we've got more than talent in the sport or music. It does show that we do have the academic ability and the educational nous to be as good as our white counterparts. So for that reason alone, it was a wonderful thing. But I retired.
How did you come back out of retirement? How did you get so tempted?
Okay, well, when I wrote the book, Chasing the Dream, it starts and finishes when I lost the Eggheads Grand Final. Yeah. So I'm sitting in my car listening to Steely Dan's greatest hits after having lost the Eggheads Grand Final. And I was just gutted. When I say gutted, I was gutted. So I thought to myself, and I was listening to the tracks for a whole hour. The Steely Band is one of my favourite bands. And I was going through all the ups and downs of my life. And I thought to myself, this would make a really, really good story. So the original story was called True to the Game, and it was mainly about my quizzing exploits. So anyway, fast forward to October 2008, I get a phone call out of the blue from ITV. They said, can I come along for an audition for what they consider to be an exciting new game show? I said, all right. So I went along. They asked me 30 questions. I got 28 out of 30. So they said to me, what am I doing now? So I said, look, I've retired from quizzing now. I said, oh, by the way, I'm on Are You an Egghead? They said to me, how did you do? So I said, I'm not telling you. If you want to see how well I did, you watch the show. And I walked out. So anyway, I got to the grand final, and I was the only contestant out of the 32 who had to play the quarterfinal, semi-final, final all in one day. Because I kept on winning. They didn't expect me to win. And along the way, I knocked out the reigning world quiz champion. So anyway, I was going to pull out after I knocked him out because I had a trial starting the following day. And I could hardly say to a judge, oh, by the way, Your Honour, can I simply nip out to go and do a BBC TV quiz show because I'm in the quarterfinals? He'd have told me where to get off. Luckily, the case was postponed. So I had one more, there was only one more recording day, but I hadn't caught up with the other contestants. So they said to me, look, Shaun, you've got to play the quarterfinal, semi-final and final all in one day. So won the quarterfinal, won the semi-final, and I was winning the final, and I had I had victory snatched from the jaws of defeat, and I was just gutted. But every cloud has a silver lining. Because when they showed me losing the Eggheads Grand Final on December the 2nd, 2008, the following day I was in front of an ITV commissioning panel.
And the thing with The Chase is I don't watch a lot of TV, sure, but I absolutely love The Chase. The format of it's so fresh and it keeps you gripped throughout it.
Yeah. So I've been... in fact, I've got another anecdote to tell as well.
Please do. I'm loving them. I'm enjoying them.
So I was on the show. I'm the world's first chaser. So all the chasers around the world, I am the offspring. I am the person, the fountain.
He is here, the only one that
And the producers, every year when they send me a Christmas card, they always send me to the chaser number one. So which is really, really nice. Anyway,
that's beautiful.
So when we were doing the pilot was on the 1st of June 2009 for about a week. So on that day, I was starting a murder trial at the Old Bailey. What am I going to do? So I went up to my leader. I said, look, I've got to do this pilot. I've just got to do this pilot. Can I go? He said, Shaun, as long as you get cover, not a problem. He was doing another trial in the Old Bailey at the same time. So I had to get cover. I had to pay that cover £5,000 a week. I got paid £100 per episode. But people might say to me, well, the economics don't make sense. But when I won the very first show in the show's history, and it was so exciting, that's convinced me. I said, this show's going to go and go and go. 12 years later, it's taken me around the world.
I can't even believe it's been on. It doesn't feel like that long.
Yeah.
It's funny how it's flown by.
Yeah, 12 years in June. So, and I've done it in Australia. They call me the Destroyer in Australia because they're a bit more PC, strangely enough. But
well, I did read a recent article about that just today, actually, but we won't go there. Okay. But what's it like to be in the sea?
In the sorry, Jeff.
In the chase, what's it like to kind of be in that sea?
It's like being in the Beatles. It's like being in one of the most famous bands in the world, where everybody loves you. You're known around the world. You're in an exclusive group where everybody would love to be in it, but you're in it. So I'm just honoured and privileged to be a chaser.
And it's wonderful. How do you, to get all this knowledge, to be so good at quiz? Is it just you just generally curious and you spend hours on the internet?
My strengths are history, science, sport, geography, literature. I'm good at classical music. Although I can't identify a piece, I can tell you who wrote what. So I'm very, very good at something about. My Achilles heel are soaps, The Simpsons. So every Achilles does have a heel. So the way in which I prepare, it's pointless me preparing subjects I'm really strong at, because the Battle of Hastings 1066, that date's never going to change, is it?
Yeah.
No. So we keep ourselves contemporary. The latest films, the latest music, who's number one in the charts, the latest prime minister of this country, the president of that country, so on and so forth. So we keep ourselves contemporary to keep ourselves up to date.
Do you ever have moments where you kick yourself out of the camera's view when you get a question wrong? Or?
Of course, yeah, of course. Two instances bring to mind. I'm one question away from winning the show. They asked me, I've got 6 seconds left, what's the only African country which begins with the letter K? Couldn't think. And they won. People were astonished. They threw us through the game. Another question, if you've never watched The Simpsons, like I've never watched The Simpsons, you're not going to know. They asked me, again, I'm one question away from winning, who's the oldest Simpsons child? Now, I know there's 3 of them because I read the newspapers. I know there's Maggie, there's Bart and Lisa. Bart, Lisa, Bart, Lisa. I said Lisa. It was Bart. The backlash I got, the troubles I got was, but you know what? Doesn't bother me.
It's hilarious watching you as well, because your sense of humour is so funny. It's I do enjoy it. So sort of moving on, because we want to kind of give people as much help as we possibly can, which is kind of, the whole nature of this show. And I think, your strength, your determination, really, the way you've got such resolve, it's so nice to hear that story. And I think especially in these times at the moment where it must be awful being a graduate now and coming out the other side.
It is. And I think it's important that people like me, I think it's important that people in the profession, in particularly at the top end of the profession, should realise that we've got to look after the people at the bottom. We've got to look after the people who are coming in. Because if we don't, as I said to you before, the profession is going to wither on the vine and die. End of story. Just how it goes. And we can't have that sort of inwardly selfishly looking, I'm all right, Jack approach to not only just law, but other professions. I think it's, one of the best things you can be as a human being is to have that altruistic attitude to your fellow person, to try and help the next people up. I could never ever claim to be a self-made man. If you read the first page of my autobiography, what I said, I quote Dunn, no man is an island. Do you think I was a self-made man? Absolutely not. Right? No person who's been the most successful person in the world can basically say, I did it by myself. Unless you manage to get the 6 numbers on the lottery, nobody has done it by themselves.
They haven't.
One thing I would always say to people is this, though, and this is so true. Always make sure you put your best foot forward, because you never know who's watching you. You can have all the talent in the world. You still need that element of luck to be in the right place at the right time to show that talent.
I agree with you. I think that's really good advice. Well, what would you say to people who might be thinking at the moment, I really want to get into law. It's so difficult. I love hearing Shaun's story. It's really, really helped me. But what would you kind of say to them in this place at this time now?
Apart from urging you to read my story and read my autobiography, look at me as an example of a person who 20 years ago was going through a very, very difficult time, was wondering whether or not his future was behind him, was wondering whether or not he really would make that quantum leap into being somebody, doing something. And I'm a living proof of the fact that the talent I had, when I had the opportunity to be in the right place at the right time, to be seen by the right person, I took it. And because sometimes, I'm telling you this now, Jason, there are 1 trillion lawyers who are better than me. There are 1 trillion quizzers who are better than me. I don't have a problem with that because it's a true fact. The difference between me and them is that their talent may never ever see the light of day. And they may spend the rest of their lives asking themselves, why, if only? Because they weren't in the right place to show their right talent at the right time. You've always got to put your best foot forward because you don't know who's watching you. You don't.
And you can't wait for opportunity to knock at your door. You've got to go out there.
You can't. You've got to go out there. You've got to go out there. And I'm not basically saying sit at home and wait for luck to. You've got to engineer your luck. You've got to basically put yourself about. And listen, I put myself about so many times. People might thought I was a streetwalker of ill repute. But you've got to do that because, as I say, and when you get that opportunity, when it comes to interviews, when it comes, it's crucial. You've got to put your best foot forward. They've got to see, why are you the person I should choose over X, Y, or Z?
And I think that's really, really important. I think that you've got to get yourself out there, and I think what you've done, you know, in the face of real adversity, you've just come back again and again and again. And I think that's a real lesson for people to take.
Like me, I can't do it by myself. I can only do what I can do, and I'll continue to do that to the day I die. And that's why I would never ever turn anybody away. I will never ever disrespect anybody because of the fact that they're there and I appear to be there. Because you know why? Life has a funny way of turning around, and you know, it does, right? Because you know, I will never ever disrespect you because one day I may call you sir or madam.
That is one of the truest things I've heard, and that's why I absolutely love you, Shaun Wallace. Everything you say is beautiful, and I have exactly the same outlook on my life as well. To be in a place of privilege and to, you know, even me to be making money.
With power and fame comes responsibility.
It does, and it does.
And that's why I don't have showbiz friends. Don't have them because they weren't my friends in the past. Why are they my friends now? What? Because I'm on telly? No. But I want to use my fame in a way whereby I know my words can make a real difference to somebody's life in the future.
They can, and I think they are going to.
I taught over 3,000 students in my part-time teaching career, and I met one the other day, and he turned around and said to me, "Shaun, I became a lawyer because of you," and that made me cry.
I can imagine it did. To have that level of impact in people's lives.
Yeah. Little, you saw a little acorn that's going to go into an oak tree. That oak tree is going to drop an acorn, another oak tree, and so on and so forth. So if my philosophy is correct, if I, you know, that's what I say to people. The best compliment you can pay me, don't match my achievements, beat them.
I love that.
Don't match me, beat me. Because my philosophy must be correct. And you can pay me no greater compliment than surpassing my achievements.
And do you know what? I think that's such a refreshing thing to hear. And the whole conversation's been great. And I think people must read the book because, to you know, chasing the dream, it's everything you've said is just so valid. And I think people these days need to sometimes show that bit more resolve. I think there's a generation of expectation now, and I think that people need to realise, you know, that if you really want to achieve your dreams, you've got to go for it. Obviously, I am generalising somewhat, but I think this has been such a great episode, Shaun, and I think people are going to find it absolutely so useful. You say that you're on a closing note, and you mentioned that you're always, you know, chasing the dream. Where is the dream evolving to for you? What's next?
Well, as I say, it's all about trying to create opportunities for myself. The way I see myself now, I see myself as I used to see myself as a milestone for people to follow. I saw myself as you know, the person who shattered the concrete ceiling, goes through it. I now see myself as a brick on the path to somebody else's success.
On the yellow brick road.
Yeah. Because one day that's exactly what I'm going to be. I'm not going to be here forever. But the one thing I'd like to think that long after I've shuffled off this mortal coil, that the name Shaun Wallace meant something.
We have very similar outlooks on life, Shaun. I really, really like that. And I just want to say a massive thank you to you for sparing your time and coming on this podcast, this very, very special edition with the Law Society. And I think your story is definitely going to inspire people in this time when I think we all need a bit of Shaun Wallace's optimism and that real resolve that you show. So I just want to say a big thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Well, that was the special episode of the Career Success Podcast with Shaun Wallace in collaboration with the Law Society. Until next time, goodbye.